And thank you, Antoine. Good morning, everyone,
Good
and
morning.
welcome to the last of a four-part session featuring Dr. Nancy Cloud, our famous and ever popular uh, professor emeriti from Rhode Island, uh, on promoting language development and expanding L's in grades 5 to 8. This brings to closure, I think, a very intense four-part series. I I hope you've all enjoyed it and learned a lot from this, and we expect to continue with more of these sessions in the future. At the end of this, you'll be given an opportunity to share with us some of your takeaways, and also for you to think about some things that the Language Arbor can help you with for next year. So, Nancy, it's your show.
Okay, great, Ron. Thank you so much. So, as you all know, and thank you for being here, we know that this is a particularly busy time of year for everyone. Um, but we're going to be wrapping up today the series on promoting language development and expanding L's. And the goal of this series was to work on helping kids unpack sentences independently. We've been focusing on the language of demanding grade level novels, and we know that kids have been really challenged, that expanding kids are still challenged by grade level novels, especially when they're very dense. And we want to help make sure that they have strategies so that when they're by themselves with difficult text, that they have strategies so that they can unpack very complex text. So just as a reminder, where we started was talking about what contributes to text complexity. I gave you definitions of what makes text complex, and I hope that those schematas will be useful to you in thinking about the elements of complex text. And then we did remind ourselves that, of course, building background knowledge is important. And I suggested that with novels, you identify the most important fields of knowledge, thinking about the things that underlie a particular knowledge that kids need to know about. And we've been using the example of To Kill a Mockingbird, and there they would need something, they would need to know something about how the court system functions in the United States, about that time period, and the Great Depression and people's struggles, and also about racism in the United States and especially in the Deep South. And so all of that in the Jim Crow era. So all of that would be like big fields that we would want to build. And then we got into the strategies themselves, and we looked at language dives, unpacking juicy sentences, and then some graphic organizers that can help kids take apart very dense descriptive passages, which are quite common in novels. So it could be a descriptive passage about an event that took place, a setting where this is taking place, a town, for example. The author might really deeply describe every element of a town. And then sometimes characters have very dense descriptions of who they are and all of their characteristics. So that's where we started. And then last time we moved on to thinking about vocabulary and what kids can do on their own when they encounter words that they don't know. And Elfrida Hebert reminded us that in a 100-word sample, there could be, for native speakers, there could be as many as 8 words that kids won't know. That would be common. And it could be even more, right, for English learners. So then we want to have kids have ways, we want to directly teach vocabulary, but we can only teach so much. And I suggested to you that you need to teach 3 different types of vocabulary when you're in a novel. We'll review that in a minute. We need some word analysis tools because it's a novel, there's a gazillion words in it, and how are we going to decide what words to work on? And then we definitely want kids to be word conscious. Once they get to the expanding level, they need to notice words that they don't know, and they need to say to themselves, oh, that's an interesting word, or there's a word I don't know, I think I'll look it up. And they can't do that for every word they don't know, but they should start to have an appetite for learning words on their own. And there's things we can do to build that appetite. And then we also want to be absolutely sure that kids can use every type of contextual clue independently so they can go after words that they don't know, that they would have strategies to say, there's a word I don't know. Well, let's see if I can find something in the same passage that can help me. And there are 7 different types of context clues, and we want to make sure they can use all of them. And then the last thing we talked about was how it's not enough to just have kids write words down in a vocabulary notebook. They have to do something active with the vocabulary if they're going to make it part of their language system. And again, the vocabulary experts have quantified this and said they probably need to use a word and encounter a word and apply a word at least a dozen times for it to start to go into their system. And it is true that sometimes a word just goes right in and they notice it and they start using it and they love it, but that's rarer. We really want to give them practice to make it part of their system. So it's not enough for me to use it and for them to guess the meaning. They have to start using the word. And last time we talked about it's not just enough to listen, they have to speak the word. They have to, when they read the word, know it. And they have to start writing the word all on their own without me telling them, I want you to use these words. So at the end of the series, the reason I reviewed this was because at the end of today, we're going to ask you to tell us what you thought of this series before you also give feedback to the Arburn about things that you reactions that you have to the offerings of this year and things that you would be helpful to you for the future. So these are the things that we must as teachers be working on with expanding Ells. Our goal has to be for them to be independent text processors, and we need to let them in on the secret. Hey, I'm not always going to be with you, and you need to have strategies all by yourself. When you're alone and you're faced with complex text, I want you to feel confident, and I want you to say yourself, okay, I have strategies, let me try my strategies. And so the first type of strategies they need to have is to take sentences apart into chunks, to use procedures like a language dive, like a juicy sentence unpacking, templates and graphic organizers that we work on with them in class, and they become so good at, they're able to design it for themselves and implement it on their own on a test or when they're by themselves reading complex text and they have zero help at the particular moment. And then we also want them to have ways to independently acquire new words or to figure out the meaning of unknown words, because even native speakers are encountering unknown words, and certainly our Ells will encounter even more. So we want them to start to expand their vocabulary to use more precise words. Last time I tried to prove to you with an expanding student sample that kids use the safe words. They use their clutch words or their safe words, and we need to push them. They repeat words, so we need them to vary the vocabulary that they're using. And we need them when they're by themselves and they see a word they don't know to notice word forms as a clue to meaning, or word functions as a clue to meaning, or how to use the entire context to figure things out. And I want to stress again, this is your job. This is what you need to be working on. Kids can't just learn these strategies all by themselves. We have to actively teach the strategies. And we know from research that it's very good if we name. Okay, if somebody needs to be on mute, that is not. We need to name the strategy. That's why it has a name like language dive or synonym context clue and explanation context clue and so forth. We need to name them so that kids can name them to themselves and can use them. So what we're really going to review today is the strategies that we know we can use to expand and refine the vocabulary in expanding Ells. We want them to use many more nouns than they're currently using, and we want them to have more variety in the way that they refer to the same concept. And we want them to know how to change words into other parts of speech. So in this case, how to change a verb into a noun, and that's called nominalization. And then we definitely want them to get rid of these everyday verbs, get rid of them, and start to use more precise and vivid verbs, because that's how they're going to be viewed as proficient. And then we want them to use more adjectives. We want the adjectives to be precise. And there too, we want them to be able to change a verb into an adjective or other parts of speech into adjectives. We want them to use more adverbs. This is a big thing for us to notice, because kids are modifying their nouns, but not their verbs. And then we definitely want them to vary their connections that they include, or their transitional phrases or terms. Like, we don't want expanding L's to be using things like first, next, then, finally. We want them to use things like whereas, nevertheless, and so forth. So we want to start teaching those connective terms. And then we definitely want them to be able to consume and produce figurative language. So that's what we're working on. And we also talked last time, and I did want to remind you that the research shows very definitively that words are learned most effectively in conceptual bundles. So words belonging to a knowledge base. So when it comes to Kill a Mockingbird, this would, if we're into the schema of what goes on in a trial, it would be words like courthouse, case, evidence, indictment, guilt and innocence, offense, defendant, prosecutor. Those words go together. They can be learned more effectively if they're taught as a bundle. Then there's morphological bundles where they learn word parts, prefixes and suffixes, and root words, and they start to see those parts, and we can teach a whole family of words that uses the same root or the same prefix or the same suffix. And we can also teach words in functional bundles, such as adjectives or verbs. And last time we looked at something that is on the text project site that Elfriede Hebert has designed, and she has given us sets of synonyms that are worth teaching kids, such as last time we looked at the word argue, and there they would learn other words for argue, like debate, contend, maintain, assert, or refute, right? So we want to teach these bundles to kids because they will learn more words that way. And then I really want to refer you again to this list that was on the Padlet that we shared with you last time. And that is what she calls, Elfriede Hebert calls, a list of word reminders. This is knowledge that we want the kids to have about words, and we want them to remind themselves when they're in text of these things. The first of which is, hey, words are part of families or networks. And my vocabulary will grow if I learn more members of a word family. So not just the word deter, but also determined and so forth. Deterrent, right? We want them to learn the whole network, or at least some portion of the network. We also want them to know that when they're in a novel, that the author is going to be using words that are synonyms for one another. And so we will, when you encounter a new word, it could have a meaning that's close to a word you already know, such as argue. They know the word argue, but maybe they don't know the word contend. Okay, so then when they see the word contend, they should say to themselves, oh, maybe it has a meaning like another word I know. We want them to know that words belong in families that have the same root, and because of the root that's in a word, or the prefix or the suffix, it has a meaning that you might be able to guess. We also want them to know that in English in particular, English has many words that have multiple meanings, as many as 7 different meanings. So we want them to know that, hey, when I encounter a word, it might not have the meaning that I'm expecting. And if I try out all the meanings that I know of a word, let's say like trunk, elephant trunk, a trunk that I pack in, a trunk of a tree, then what if I try out all of my meanings and it doesn't work? Then I have to look it up, because maybe it has a meaning I don't know yet. And we also want them to know that words are part of phrases, or a compound word like, let's think, sunshine, okay, that those 2 words put together, that could have a different meaning than shine as in polish, and sun up in the sky. It doesn't have much different meaning, but I can detect the meaning because of the two words that make up the compound word. And so, but phrasal verbs is a big, big thing in English, and we want our expanding L's to be after all the meanings of those phrasal verbs, because run over, run around, run by, run that by me, run into, I just ran into him, run, give me the rundown, he ran through everything so quickly, so what are all those meanings when I add those different prepositions? And then, of course, we want kids that are multilingual to be using all the languages they know to detect the meaning of words in English. Sometimes words are borrowed from other languages, and sometimes they're actual cognates and so forth. So this chart that I copied for you, so you don't even need to buy the book, although I highly recommend this book as summer reading. This list is these are teachings about words that you want to give your expanding L's. You want to make sure they know these things about words, that they can do these things with the words, that they should know how to do these things with words, that they should expect these things about words. And that's why she calls them word reminders. So let me remind myself about this, about words. Okay, so I hope that's clear. And then for today, I wanted you to try 4 things, if you could manage. We do know that the year's getting very pressured, and you may have only been able to do a couple of these, but still that's great. And thank you for working some of it in. The first thing I wanted you to see if you could work in was to work on choosing different types of vocabulary. We mentioned that there are 3 types of vocabulary. The first type is topic or theme related or chapter related vocabulary. That should form the bulk of what you're working on with expanding L's. Like 60 to 70% of the words you choose should be theme related or chapter related or novel related words. Then 15 to 20% of the words that you choose in a particular unit should be ELA vocabulary that you want them to know. And so there, maybe you're looking at a word like foreshadowing, for example, and you want them to know that word because it's an ELA word that you're going to use when you teach other novels. And then you also want some cross-curricular vocabulary. And to find that vocabulary, we talked about how you could use the academic vocabulary list or the academic word finder to find those words. Okay, and I asked you to try them out, try out those 2 ways, if you could manage, to see how you liked those 2 ways. And then we talked about that kids need to develop this concept of word consciousness. And so if you had time, I was hoping you might be able to work on developing word consciousness with students, which involves teaching them to be alert for an author's word choices, which is part of Juicy Sentences work. And also if they do notice a word, for them to have tools like the Merriam-Webster's Learner's Dictionary or Word Hippo to find the meanings of words that they want to learn. So maybe you had your kids try out some of that. And third, I was hoping you might teach and practice several of the 7 context clues with the kids, and just to have feedback on that today, how it went, which ones they seemed to take to more easily and find easier to work with, and which ones were more difficult and they had more trouble with, and so forth. And finally, if you could, I was hoping you could try a new to you active vocabulary practice activity. We named some last time that maybe were new to you. And I was hoping if they were, that maybe you could try a couple of those. So I know that to varying degrees, you were able to do maybe a little of this, hopefully some of this. So as we think about these 3 types of learning targets that we have when we're teaching words, the idea here is that we know that ideas get repeated in a novel, but you shouldn't be repeating the vocabulary, always using the same word. So we want to help kids with that, to learn synonyms. What I'm going to focus on right now is that cross-curricular vocabulary, and that's because I want to remind you that we were looking, what I chose to look at was the academic vocabulary list and the Achieve the Core's academic word finder. But then some of you brought up Catherine Snow's free online curriculum for learning academic words called Word Generation Weekly or Word Gen Weekly. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit more today so that you know where it fits in relation to the other tools, because it is based on a tool as well. It's based on the academic word list, which was the first academic word list that we all were working with. And it was designed by a linguist in London, Averill Coxhead. And she identified 570 words in 10 groups. So fewer words, 570 words, as opposed to the academic vocabulary list that identifies 3,000 word families. And in the Word Gen Weekly, these are single words to work on, not word families, whereas with the academic word list, it's 3,000 words, but in families, imagining that you're going to teach more than one word in the family. So instead of going across, let's go down now, just as a reminder, because these are the tools that you can use. You can use the academic vocabulary list with the 3,000 words. It's based on frequency. The highest frequency word is labeled 1, and the lowest frequency word is labeled 3,000 on that list. It is not a curriculum, but that can be a good thing, because then you can use the list with any existing curriculum in ELA that you're using, remembering that ELA is the first curriculum that we do with English language learners. And what you do with the AVL list, and this is what I was hoping you would practice, is you search for words on the list from a chapter or from several pages of a chapter. You see if it's on the list, then you see its frequency, and then you decide. Nobody else decides for you what words to work on of all the words that you find. So if you're using Expeditionary Learning or Wit and Wisdom, you would search for words. It does take a little bit of time, but you get better at it over time in terms of guessing what words are likely to be on that list. And then after you identify words that you're going to work on, you practice them. And remember, this is like a low percentage of words that you're going to work on out of all the vocabulary that you work on. Maybe 15 to 20% of the words you work on will be academic words from the academic vocabulary list. But when you teach a word, you teach other words in the family. And that helps you focus on word morphology. Because when I see remember and remembrance, I'm seeing what the ence at the end of remember adds to the word. Okay, a second tool that you can use is the academic word finder. And if you use the academic word finder here, you don't search for words, you put in passages, and it identifies what it claims are tier 2 words. They never state the method that they use to identify tier 2 words, so I don't know that. I wish I did. I hunted very hard. But they say that the words that they identify are tier 2 words. They're not everyday words, and they're not rare tier 3 words. They're tier 2 words, which is academic words. But it too is not a curriculum. It's used with an existing curriculum. You're inputting passages from the curriculum. You would input a passage to be searched. You would tell the tool your grade level, like I'm in 7th grade, and the tool will find tier 2 words in the text that you input. It'll tell you if those words are above or below grade level or on grade level. And then you practice those words with your own activities, just as you would over here. And one thing that it does differently here, this list only identifies words in the family and the frequency. Here, you don't know anything about frequency, but it does give you a student-friendly definition, the part of speech, and some sample sentences. And the definitions, if you use Wordsmith, come from wordsmith.net. And then the tool that you all added last time is Word Generation Weekly or Word Gen Weekly. It's free. It's not a tool really, but it's based on a tool. The tool that it's based on is the academic word list. Here, it gives you 5 words every week to practice. You have no choice. Those are the words you're going to practice. And if your kids already know 3 out of the 5 words, they're not learning many new words. They're just practicing some words that they knew, plus learning maybe a couple more. So here, you're not having a choice about the words. They're telling you what words to teach each week. But they're giving you a curriculum, a whole curriculum that was built around these 570 words. And then they added a few words more than just the academic word list if they felt it was necessary to support the topic that they designed in order to teach those 5 words. There are 3 series with 24 one-week units per series. It focuses on a social or civic dilemma. And so they engage in oral debate and argumentative writing. And they offer you activities for ELA, social studies, science, and math. Those activities are just 15 to 20 minutes in length. But it's a little curriculum that you have to find time for in your ELA program. And I did want to mention the most important thing is that there are 3 series, but series 3 gives you something special, which is a companion guide of what to add for English learners. And it's called Advancing Academic Language for All, or ALA. And it provides additional background knowledge, discussion starters, some word study, and some language support so that your Ells can participate more fully. Okay. So now I want to show you quickly what's involved in each of these, but I will take a little more time with the Word Generation Weekly because not all of you are using this yet, and you might like to know about it because it's free. Okay, so we like that word, right? Free. So if you're going to use the academic vocabulary list, last time I told you what you have to do is you have to look at all the words in your text and you have to start putting words into the search box and seeing if they're on the list. So it's a little tedious at first, but when I do a chapter, I can guess the words pretty much now that I've used it a lot. And once I start to find a lot of words, sometimes I stop because I already have enough words, right? But this is a way that you can identify academic words that are on the academic vocabulary list, and then you know their frequency. Is it a high frequency academic word, or is it a low frequency academic word? But now I do want to show you this, which I didn't show you last time. The academic vocabulary list improves on the academic word list. That's the one that was used for word gen. The word gen list, the academic word list, was created in 2000, and it's based on 3.5 million words, which sounds like a lot, but all of the words came from the 1990s. And the new list, the academic vocabulary list, was based on 120 million words. And it also uses the 425 million word corpus of contemporary American English with text as recent as 2011. So it's still, it's not using 2021 text, but it's using more recent text. So you might care about this. The academic word list was 3.5 million words got searched, but they would be high frequency words. And then the academic vocabulary list, it has the 3,000 word families. That was based on 120 million word sample. Okay, so I wanted you to know that. The academic word finder, now I don't want to confuse you. This is the second way to find words. The academic word finder, which comes from Achieve the Core. Here, they warn you over and over that when you input text, it will identify tier 2 words, but you just want to use this as a support for planning, and it shouldn't replace your own text analysis. Yes, it will identify words, but you still may want to look at the text with your own eyeballs because there could be other words that you're going to care about. Once you input text and it finds words, it will tell you whether those words are on, above, or below grade level, which could be important. But it does not replace teacher judgment. And it is finding words that are not too common and not too rare, but maybe there's a rare word that you really do want kids to know. Like, let's say in a science text, supernova, like they have to know that word. It's rare, but they have to know it because that's what you're teaching. Then it's not going to come up when you do the academic word finder, but you could still decide, oh, that's a really important word. Okay, that's why I'm asking you when you identify words to look at 3 different types of words. Some should be topic related, some should be academic words, and some should be ELA words. The way you use the academic word finder is you don't search word by word, you copy and paste maybe 1 to 3 paragraphs of text, and then another 1 to 3 paragraphs of text, and so forth. And then it will identify the words for you. You do tell it the grade level that you're at, otherwise it can't tell you whether it's on, above, or below grade level. Okay, and you can name the search so that you can find it again when you use the tool the next time. Okay, so that's how that works. And it looks like this. I input this amount of text and it identified words in that text: economy, several, invested, and related. And then it told me whether or not it was below grade level, the yellow was below, the green was on grade level. And then it tells me the part of speech, a simple definition, and also a sentence. Okay, and the academic vocabulary list does not do that for you. It doesn't give you the, it does tell you part of speech, but it doesn't give you a definition. It doesn't give you a sentence. And then this was a part that one of you added last time, and another of you said you're considering using. It's free. You go to WordGen Weekly, and remember, we'll send this PowerPoint to you after today, so you'll be able to get this address. But if you look for WordGen Weekly, it should pop right up in a search. And the way that this was designed, it was designed by Catherine Snow at Harvard, who's a fantastic linguist. We certainly admire her work. And Suzanne Donovan, who's at SERP, which is Strategic Education Research Partnership. And they created a whole vocabulary program built around the academic word list, the 570 words. And it's to expand general and content-oriented academic vocabulary, to build reasoning and argumentation skills, to build reading comprehension and content area literacy, and to help kids get ready for college and career. So those were their goals. It was pilot tested in Boston and in Maryland, and they got feedback on it and they revised it. And the way that it's built is in 3 series of 24 one-week units per series. They're ready to roll. All the material is there for you. You just download it. This I wanted to stress. You can use the units in any order. You do not have to use unit 1, then unit 2, then unit 3. You could use unit 13 and then jump to unit 5. And that way you could match the rest of your curriculum better, maybe. You could make it fit better or work for you better if you look at all of the units and their orientation and their theme, and then you decide in what order to do them. And you could also skip around between the 3 series for that matter. And what they offer you in each case is they pose a social or civic dilemma in a reading, and then they provide kids with 5 connected activities. One is learning the vocabulary. They emphasize 5 focus words per week. You don't get to pick the words from the academic word list. They've already picked the words for you. That's how they were able to design the curriculum. And whether your kids need those words or not, that's what you're going to be working on that week. So I want to stress that to you, because you might want to combine some academic vocabulary. If you say, like in a given week, let's say you go, oh, gee, my kids already know 3 of those words. Well, you could maybe find some other words from the academic vocabulary list to teach. And it is aligned to Common Core if your school should care. So just to show you this, and I chose Unit 3, because remember, Unit 3 has ELL supports added to it, the ALA program, which I'm going to show you all of it. And I thought that all of you might want to know this, so I hope I'm spending time well today before we engage in the discussion. If I were to use Unit 1, these are my 5 words: controversy, justify, perspective, bias, and debate, because the topic is, should school be a place for debate? Yes or no? And this is a controversy, and what do people think? All of the lists, all of the words are on the academic word list and also on the academic vocabulary list. So there's overlap. It's just the academic word list has fewer words than the AVL. Remember that. Controversy is not on either list. So that was added because this is a controversy, and the designers of the curriculum decided to add that word, even though it wasn't on any academic word list. Whereas in Unit 2, all of these words are on the academic word list, and they're also on the academic vocabulary list. So there's overlap. The way the unit starts, you do this reading. And then after the reading, you teach the 5 words: controversy, justify, etc. Notice the words are repeated on every page. Then there's a math activity for you to do. It's supposed to take 15 to 20 minutes. And there's a discussion question at the end for more discussion. Then there's a science activity. And then there's a question also at the end of that. Then there's an oral debate that kids get ready for, where they take a position on the issue. Yes, school should be a place for debate, or no, school should not be a place for debate. And it does offer them some sentence stems down here. I wanted you to notice that because we use those a lot. And you could create your own argument. That's what this is for. This is one argument, another argument. Here's a third argument. And then there's writing, argumentative writing, where I have to take a stand. Yes, I believe it, school is a place for debate, or no, let's keep it out of school. We have enough debate elsewhere. So the ELL support looks like this. Before I would even do the reading, remember, this is the reading, should school be a place for debate? It's a 1-pager. It's on, it's middle school level. Before they would do that, the ELLs would learn a little bit about the civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, and Martin Luther King. So they would build a little background. Then they would do the reading. Then before they engage in the debate, I would walk them through some arguments that students have made, pro and con, some arguments that teachers have made, pro and con, some arguments that parents have made, pro and con, some arguments that principals have made, pro and con. And for future employment, should the workplace be a place for debate? What do employers think, pro and con, of debating things at work? Yes or no? And so notice this wasn't in the original unit, but we are offering this to English learners to walk them through some of the typical arguments and to build on the arguments that they might start to use themselves. Okay, so this is still kind of background building. Another thing that wasn't in the original unit that was designed for Ells was to teach them something about words, how words work. And this one is about building adjectives from verbs. So all of these take place in this topic. And so here I would teach them to go from rely to reliable, justify to justifiable, amplify to amplifiable, and so forth. And so they would get that word work. And then I would give them some preparation for the debate. They would have some partner work and step 1, step 2, step 3 to get ready for the debate. And they would do some practice. And so here they're going to practice things that they might say and what the person might say back to them kind of against their argument and so forth. And then another thing that's offered, this is the original, this is the beginning reading. It doesn't look exactly the same to you, but this is the beginning reading. I don't want to keep scrolling back. And what this does is it identifies parts of the opening text you should point out to kids as they're reading. So here it's saying things like, some people think, other people think, that some and other, some and other. Some supporters of this debate may point out, but other people do not believe. And so it's showing them opponents and supporters, and it's showing them parts of the text that they might need to be able in their own argument. So this is what the program is. It's a series of units like this, but it's only in series 3 that you will get the ELL support. But if you choose to use series 1 and series 2, this is giving you ideas of what you yourself might want to add as ELL support to better support those first 2 units. They didn't go back and add it to all 3 of the series. They just left it with series 3. They also offer you word cards. And I have to admit, to develop word cards for words like this is really difficult, but I did want to show you that, like for controversy, notice that this picture is, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, what if kids don't understand that when they look at the picture? They're not used to that being a common argument, which came first, the chicken or the egg. Now I'm off into doing that instead of going back to, should school be a place for debate? So I don't know if I would use the word cards, but you'll be the one deciding. But they do offer it to you for the 5 words. They try to give you a picture for when you introduce the words. So now, finally, I'm letting you discuss. Now I want you to feel free to turn on your mic and to speak. Which of these would you use and why? Which of these did you try? What was your experience with this? How did you like the academic vocabulary list if you tried it? How did you like the academic word finder? Are you a user of the word gen curriculum? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What do you think about the explanation that I gave you? We're just going to engage now in a discussion, and feel free to turn on your mic. Anyone?
Can I just ask you a question? I'm sorry. And Ms. Ortiz, I believe, tried to answer. You named at some point about 3-4 minutes ago about 3 types of words: topic related, ELA related. The third one, which one was it? Was it academic vocabulary?
Yes,
Okay.
it was. Exactly. It's what we're looking at now.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we're going to go back to the 3 types in a minute. So thank you for bringing that up. And but now I just wanted to, because I asked you to try out these different ways. Did anybody get to try them out? Do you have any reactions for us? There's no wrong answer here, people.
Hey, this is Antonio Perez.
Yeah, Antonio, go.
So I did the first one. I've actually used academic vocabulary list and academic word finder, that website. I've used both of those. The academic vocabulary list, I used it once to like I would go to the website, type in a word that maybe comes up, and then I would do it to teach the other word families. At first, what I was going to do was try to like kind of start with the first one and teach all of them. But then I said, no, that didn't work based on trainings with here. And instead, what I would do is now I find the word and then I would put the word family. So for example, if the word was, I don't know, I think maybe vacate, right? You could put vacate, like maybe vacancy and things like that. Then I would just put those together as I taught them.
Yes, well, exactly, Antonio, and exactly. And you could overwhelm kids really quickly, right? If you teach too many, keep your mic on, but you did it right. That's the way you should do it.
Okay, so that one I've had experience. I've had experience with that where I would put a picture, but I haven't. I thought that was good. I just think that the list is a little bit overwhelming. Even navigating it to me was a little bit difficult at the beginning. I feel like it's something that you have to visit a few times, or at least spend like maybe more than 10 minutes. It's not something quick that you can just go and find. I think it's something that you have to look at for a while to kind of like just start feeling comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. It's overwhelming. So it's completely a lot to do, but some of you are at that point. And also remember, like with the juicy sentences, like you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to only use it, but from time to time, you might want to use it because you might look at a text and go, I don't really know what to work on here. And I'm tempted to do this or that. And then where it might help you is it gives you the frequency, right? So if you see it's on the list, let's say you come up with some words you're thinking about doing, not even looking at the academic vocabulary list as you choose them, then you could try out those words that you're thinking about doing and just look at their frequency. So you could use it that way, Antonio. That's another way to use it. But I promise you, you get better at it. Like I've gotten quicker with it over time, but I have a lot more time than all of you have. So I readily acknowledge that. When you're teaching full time, you're lucky you have time for anything. So I would see this as, if you're engaged in a curriculum project, you might want to do some of this, but I want you to know of the list, because what's great about the list is it gives you words in families. So once you've chosen a word, let's say you've chosen words using Academic Word Finder, you could still use the AVL to help yourself know the frequency, because Academic Word Finder doesn't tell you that. And then if you were thinking about 10 words and you're only going to do 4, it could tell you which words to do. So you can combine it with other methods and not just use it as the sole tool. Is that making sense?
Yes, definitely. I agree. I agree with combining everything, not just like going to this tool and saying, okay, this is what it has, but they basically like as that other blue, like I think it was called the I'm sorry, you had something called the cross-curricular vocabulary tools on that for another program. You said, hey, that the teacher should be the final judgment. So I kind of
Yeah.
agree with that as well.
That's this one, the academic word finder, because it's only going to find tier 2 words, but you might have a tier 3 word you know they need to learn.
So can I talk about that one too right now, or are you just doing
Yeah,
one?
go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So I also use the academic word finder, and what I liked about this one, I think if I remember correct, like it saves your list. So if you whatever you look up, it kind of has it there if you create an account.
Yes, and the academic vocabulary list doesn't do that. Good point.
So I like that. I like that point. I like that part. But I did at the beginning. I did also experience that that it only looks up to tier 2 words.
Yes, and we don't know how they, like, I kept trying to find out, well, how did they identify tier 2 words? There's no list of tier 2 words anywhere. So, and how do I know they're at my grade level for tier 2, right? So I had a lot of questions about it, but the fact that they kept giving caveats on every page that you should use your own eyes as well, told me that they don't want you to only trust it. They want you to use other methods, right? So definitely those of you that know your kids and you know the novel, you should definitely you should really value your own expertise and your own judgment. Definitely you should. Anything else, Antonio?
But I just want to say also that the academic word finder, I like how it had like I like that I feel like I can use this one to give a quick glossary for those kids that are expanding or like around that level, because I do work with a class of expanding kids, and I just felt that once I went there, I can give a glossary maybe of those tier 2 words that they might not know.
Right.
You know, I could add the extra words as well, the tier 3 words and things like that. But I like the I was gonna say it's like easiness, but really it's just kind of how quickly it makes a list for you, and it has the definitions right there.
And a sentence and a model sentence too. No, it has a lot to recommend it, but I can't input a word and have it give me a definition, right? So if I do decide on another word, I'm going to have to find a definition for it. That's why I told you about the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It gives a good definition, as does Word Hippo. So there are going to be times where the academic word finder is not going to be enough either, which is why I really, I'm an ex-middle school teacher, so I understand at least a little bit, even though life has changed since I was in the classroom. You need more than one tool, right? You can't just rely on one tool, and each one has advantages and disadvantages. So you have to know how to use them all together. But the more tools you have, the better off you are. And you'll get good about knowing what each one's going to offer you. That's going to be very helpful. So let's hear from someone else. Antonio, thank you for your input. It was very useful.
All right, this is Chioma Okora for Antonio's companion at school. So Antonio and I both teach at the same school, junior high school 218 and 8th grade. And we were looking at, I went to the academic word finder, but Wit and Wisdom has given us some broad categories like loss of innocence, comradeship, and annihilation, because we're reading All Quiet on the Western Front, right?
Yes.
So I found that comradeship, and looking for evidence of it, we came upon the word revenge. And so I went to the word finder and put it in, and I found that venge is the root word, right? Yeah. From Latin, it said. So now I was getting my kids to, it gave me all the word families. It gave me the connection between the verb, right? The verb was to seek, the adjective was vengeful.
Yes.
Vengeful. And the verb there was the noun. They were looking for vengeance. That was the noun. But my kids wanted to know if somebody that sought vengeance could be called an avenger. So some of the kids that were not Ells, some of the regular kids in the classroom had the MCU connection. And they said, so that's why they're called the Avengers. They're seeking vengeance for their comrades. So they were able to, yeah, they were able to make that kind of connection.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you for that example, because that shows you that whereas the academic word finder is not going to show you all the forms, you might want to, it will show you some of the usages, but it's not going to show you all of the forms. And once the kids offer you something like Avengers, and then you know, you might want to say she was vengeful, you know, like you might want to go into a whole morphological lesson with them about different endings. And if once they've taken interest in a word, and this is something, Choma, that I would want to say is, now they've taken interest in this word, right? So I want to expand on that because they're excited about the word, and then it's worth going into, right? A little bit more.
Yeah, I did. Another word that came up was absurdity, right? The noun absurdity.
Yes.
And we looked at the family. Yeah, yeah. Because some of the actions in their chapter 3, some of the things that were done to them was absurd. And so we found the meaning of absurdity. And now the when you talked about using pictures, so we did that. And I found a way to make it in such a way that they could connect to it. So with the Grammys that had just happened, some of the artists that they thought should have won, they didn't win, and some that won were people they couldn't connect to. So we had a picture of Doja Cat and The Weeknd, and that led to the discussion. So that was how they were able to connect to what was an absurdity. But then when they made their meaningful sentences, they all used me in their example, that my taste in music is an absurdity, because I do not know anything after all. So the word pictures took us away from All Quiet on the Western Front, but they were able to connect to the fact that some of the actions that was happening to the boys were evidence of absurdity, but mostly they focused on my taste in music in their own meaningful sentences.
Yeah, cool. That's cool. Now, but you were starting with the academic word finder, is that right?
Yes, that's where I went straight.
Yeah, okay. But then you found your own pictures, is that right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and that's
Because-
always best, you know, because
Yeah.
you know your kids really well, and also you're doing things at a moment in time, like you were able to do it right after an award ceremony, and then you're able to make those connections. So I like it best, you know, like I think teachers do the best job. I'll leave it there. Teachers do the best job because you know your kids, but all these elements are useful. Teaching words in families, having picture support, giving good examples, giving simple definitions that kids can understand, teaching more than one form of the verb, of the word, excuse me. All of this is what we need to be doing with expanding Ells. So thank you, Chioma.
Welcome.
So would one other person like to?
I would like to share if that's okay. Kasia Wallen, Harold Olivi, 52.
Sure.
So I did use I really like this academic vocabulary list. And I was introducing the new unit. And I looked up 2 words from the video that students were watching. It was adversity and intimate. So I, as a do now, gave them, they are very familiar with the Freyer model, but also I provided on top of the Freyer model different forms of the word. In hope they will use them in the discussion that was after the video. So then I did the anticipation guide. I included those words in the anticipation guide before they.
That's great. Yeah,
So
that's great. I just want to reinforce that, Kasia, that's fantastic. You have to give them an activity that puts the words to use.
Yes, because that was my goal. Those are my targeted words. And then we watched the video. Then again, after the video, they had to discuss. And again, they had to use those words because I am basically making them use the words because they have to restate the question, the statement. And then we had a discussion. I posed some questions. And so this is what I'm struggling with. Like they have been using different forms, like intimately, intimate, because I provided them with the words. They had the list on top of the Freyer model. So this is what I started to incorporate in my classes. But I would like them to use more, especially adverbs. As you mentioned, they do not they just do not use adverbs. They do not modify verbs.
Right. So remember way back when we were doing language dives, and the way that that teacher, that model was a fourth grade teacher, she had a word wall. So when you teach intimately, if you're working on adverbs, you could have a special part of the room. Like, now this is imagining you're in the same room and some of you have to travel. But if you're in the same room, it could be up on the wall that you're working on adverbs. And then when you put intimately up on the, you would take that word form, put it up on the wall and then say, don't forget. And you could even color code the LY so they really notice it. And then when you're cueing them in the future to use more adverbs, you could say, well, look at the wall, maybe it'll give you ideas, you know, because what you're trying to get them to do is to note it. And by the way, adverbs don't only get formed with LY, right?
Right, yes.
Like it, so that it gets a little more complicated than that. But we want to in every place in the room. But remember that when you're starting this work, Kasia, it's new to them. They are going to get better over time. They're going to do more and more of what you want them to do. I remember once I did this individualized math lab with 120 kids. It was ridiculous to be individualized for 120 kids. But the first year I thought I was going to die. And the second year, I never had another year like that because the kids help one another. They go, remember, we're supposed to do like this. And so all the things that I felt I had to do myself the first year, I had a team behind me because now the kids were more facile with what I wanted them to learn. But at first it's awkward. They're not doing what you want. It's like, just don't give up on it. Just have a lot of support systems and ways that you're reinforcing it in the room. But nobody learns anything with one unit, right? So it's the repetition across units that's going to start to get to them. How did you find the searching for words in the AVL? Was it hard, like Antonio was saying?
It's fine. It was okay for me because I picked those 2 words, 3 words, and one was not there. So I decided not to focus. I just focused on the ones that I found on the list. And fortunately, they were in the video. And they were good for discussion. So I had no problem with finding the words. And I really appreciate that I have different forms already given. So it just makes my life easier. But you know what, with adverbs, I wonder if you think it's a good idea. So when we were doing To Kill a Mockingbird, because we've noticed with the teacher, my co-teacher, they do not use those adverbs. So we pulled out sentences from the chapter that we have already read. We put the sentences with the adverbs. We put the sentences in the shared document, and then the students had to, and then we had the columns like a verb and adverb, and students had to, and it was like a do now, a quick activity. Students had to identify a verb and in a sentence, and then they had to identify an adverb. And we also included the word hippo and this Merriam-Webster on the bottom, just the words of interest if they don't know the word. So it's like additional activity for them. If they are curious about the words, they can look them up. Do you think that's a good?
Oh yeah, that's a great activity.
Okay,
because
great.
it has to start somewhere, that they start to be able to identify the function of the words. Remember, we were saying like word function is a cue, but if they're not even seeing how the words are functioning, then how are they going to take it apart? So it does start with activities like that. Yes. Perfect.
They did very well. I have to tell you, they were very quick and they were helping each other because that was not the first time we were like focusing on parts of speech. And it doesn't take long once they get used to it.
And so once you see they have it, don't keep doing it.
Yes, yes.
Right? Like there's no point to it. Don't keep doing exercises when they've already learned it. Okay, now I'm sorry. I'm going to have to move on because I'm looking at the time. But I have invited you every single time to write to me. I always give you my email. So if you didn't get to speak today, but you want to share, please put ideas in the chat. And also I read the chat every time, and also feel free to write to me. And if right now is too crazy, you can write to me at any time. It's always my email, right? So no problem with that. So the other thing that we wanted you to be doing was to consider all the 3 types of vocabulary. So would anyone like to talk about trying to find these 3 types of vocabulary, your experience with looking for all 3? And I I spoke these percentages last time, but I didn't write them down. So, I mean, this is just a guide, right? You don't have to follow this slavishly, but I was just trying to think, where should your emphasis be? It should always be on your chapter, your theme, your novel, and then you're always working a little bit on ELA vocabulary and always a little bit on cross-curricular, but you don't want to go so overboard here that you're forgetting about that it's an ELA class. So anyone want to speak about this? How was it to hunt for the 3 types of words? Did anyone get to do this? Okay, well, if there's no takers, just remember that, this is something that we want to be doing in every unit, identifying the vocabulary that we're going to work on, or mini unit or subunit. Like sometimes, a novel takes a long time. So what we call a unit might not be the entire novel. It might be parts of it, the first third, the second third, and so forth. So any questions at all about identifying words to teach? That identification process, or any strategy, a comment that someone would like to make, what seems to work well for you in identifying words?
May I?
Yes.
Sure. So, I remember, if I may quickly give a little history, the word jazzing students. I remember learning that at Steinhardt. It was in one of those publications. However, that stuck to my own head, and we're talking about years ago. And I have noticed more and more, the only way I can get kids to learn big words, functional words, utility words, and also academic words is exactly what jazzes them. And of course, it's very difficult to have a group of, 10, 15 kids that one topic jazzes everybody. But I have learned, and this is what I do, I do have a little bit of freedom to choose what I want to teach them. And I usually choose what I love to learn. And somehow it resonates with them, or if it doesn't, I'll just put it aside. And then that way they really get glued. And even if they're really, their vocabulary treasure box is not really filled up, they really get glued. Like yesterday in my after school, I was teaching anatomy of our body to first graders, and I was shocked. I was so happy to see them stuck to the page, and they were just like really wanting to learn. So that concept of jazzing, or whatever this jazzes the students, I guess it's the right time, COVID time, they look for their health, and somehow it worked. Maybe that would be, and I know great linguists and great professors like yourself, you've talked about this all the time, but I see it in practice happening.
Yeah, well, it's engagement, and especially with middle schoolers, and especially remote teaching. Oh my goodness, everything hinges on them being engaged or not engaged. So it is extremely important to have freedom, which is why whatever we use, we want to have as many degrees of freedom as possible so that we can get connected, somehow get those kids excited. And sometimes you can build excitement from your own excitement and enthusiasm, but sometimes even you're excited, they're not, so it's good to let go of something that nobody's connecting to and try to move on if you can. But some of you are mandated to do specific units, and then you have to try to jazz it up the best way you know how to find some connection. And I think, the earlier example about using the Oscars, like sometimes we find a connection, or the Avengers. Like sometimes that connection, they weren't caring about it at all till you brought up Avengers. Now they start to care about vengeance. Right. So definitely with middle schoolers. Okay, so we're going to have to not talk more about this, because we also want to talk about word consciousness, developing that in students. Did any of you get to work on trying to get the kids to have their own sense of word consciousness? I know that many of you have tried the Learner's Dictionary and Word Hippo. Maybe you have comments about those. How you work on getting them to notice authors' word choices. Anything there that people want to speak about, this concept of word consciousness. We'll leave a minute more of silence and then we'll move on. Okay, well, you definitely want to be working on this, okay? So I'll just want to stress that to you one more time, that person that needs to be word conscious is the kid, not you. And so you will model for them through think alouds and so forth. We looked at that last time, but they're the one that has to all by themselves with no prompting start to be interested in words. Okay, so how about this? I'm hoping that some of you got to try these various types of context clues. There are 7 of them. And were there any, like, how did it go when you worked on this? Did anyone get to work on this using context clues?
I use, but I don't want to talk all the time. I'm sorry. So
That's all right, Cassia. Well, let's see if someone else has something to
Yes,
share, and if not, I'm sure they'd like to hear from you.
You know, I'm glad you were courageous to say that. I felt the same way. And so going back to the word consciousness, I use the chat in remote, and kids immediately repeat, at least writing them. And then I use them in the asynchronous assignments a lot. And as regards to context clues, we always have to use them. And even if there is like a text that I choose and it's not there, then I go in and add it. And then I bring everything to Microsoft and I make sure I highlight it so they learn to look for context clues in earlier years. And of course, later on, you know, so this is, and I am so happy that you've been really highlighting this because that's where it is. And then also, I use a lot of big words myself and a lot of out of books words, and they're always like shocked. And then, you know, somehow, I don't know, I feel like that way they will learn the big words, the big concepts, and then it comes down to small things. And I'm not scared to use them with them, even if it's not age appropriate. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be saying this. I know it's being recorded, but you know what? I use big words for 3rd graders and they're using them.
I think, you know, what makes train harder than choo-choo, right? Like
right.
Like all of this. So, but which of these are easiest for your kids to use and which are hardest, you know? So some of these are very simple and kids don't have any trouble with it. And others of them are like to find an explanation or definition or to see an example and use an example. I think that's a little bit easier. Which of these do your kids find more difficult? Because then it means that we have to, inference is really the hardest. And that's why we leave it to last. Like I'm only going to go there if I have to, because it means I'm making guesses. I'm inferring things and I could be so off.
Yeah, morphology, I think, you know, once I keep going at it, they get the pattern. And as you said earlier, you know, dozen of times they have to come across, and then it kicks in, and then it becomes automated. I've noticed with some kids.
They can't understand the various morphemes in English words if we haven't pointed them all out, right? And unfortunately, there's a gazillion of them. So it isn't like we just have a few to teach. The English is very, very rich. And there's so much to learn about it, which is why it's so overwhelming for kids, which is why it takes so long to go from expanding to commanding. So Cassia, were you going to say something?
But I've been using all of them basically with my students, and I know my ELA teachers also use them. They're just shy, they don't talk, but everyone uses it. So if we have this explanation or definition, you are right, it's easy for the student. So I make like a table for them, so they have to pull out this definition and then maybe look up in Word Hippo, let's say the explanation, I'm sorry, and then maybe look up in Word Hippo the definition and then write a sentence with the word. So, you know, they interact with the word a lot. and
Yes, yes,
respect.
that practice is very important.
And of course,
Miss-
morphology,
Miss O-
I agree. Prefixes, suffixes, it has to be pointed out to the students.
Yes, and a lot of teaching goes on there, right? So this is very worthwhile. But it's important for you to start to see which of these your kids acquire quickly and which are more difficult, and then to have a lot of strategies for how to work on them. Okay, so I'm
Miss
sorry, I have
Okafor,
to move
Miss Okafor
forward.
said part of speech.
It's part of speech.
Yes, she said that was the hardest.
It's very hard, part of speech, because part of speech means that you're able to do linguistic analysis yourself and know it's a verb, it's an adverb. That's tough. You're expecting them to be grammarians. So yeah, finding part of speech. But I think the activity that Kasia told us about earlier, where she has them identify just the verb and the adverb, or just the noun and the adjective, or just the prepositional phrase. Like we want to do it in an organized way and just looking at one thing, not asking them to unpack everything at once. But that's what makes juicy sentences so hard, people, is that juicy sentences expecting them to see how the part of speech, they're expected to see a lot. Okay, so I'm sorry to have to move on, but I'm mindful of the time. So the final thing that, well, I'm going to skip this completely, except to say, don't forget, you've got to work on multiple meaning words, some of which are homonyms, some of which are homographs. With homographs, you have to help them with pronunciation, like close and close.
We don't hear you, Nancy.
You don't hear me?
Nancy, we don't
You're
hear
good.
you.
Oh,
I
we
can-
hear you.
I
We
can hear her. I can hear her.
I hear you. I think it's just you, Gloria.
Yeah.
Is everyone else hearing
Okay.
me?
Yep.
Okay, so anyway, do help with the pronunciation, like object, give me that object, I object, right? And are kids going to remember object and object? Not unless they speak it. And so, you're going to have to do a lot of practice if you're going to help with the pronunciation, but there's a clue with how they sound different with a homograph, but with a homonym, there's no clue. It's pen and book and book. There's no difference. Now they have to see how the word works. Okay, so
We had a problem with affect and effect.
with what?
Affect and effect,
Oh, effect.
right?
Yeah, effect.
And
object.
yes, that I remember we had to teach that as a deep dive, and they came so close to meaning because the effect of something can have an effect on you.
Yes.
And the essential question was, how do literature and art illuminate the effects of World War I?
Yes.
So,
But now,
so
children, those are not multiple meaning words. They throw kids
I know.
because they're so close, but it's not he effectuated or whatever. You can use that as a verb, or what was the effect. Like with these multiple meaning words, they're different than exactly what you're describing, but what you're describing is also a challenge for kids, definitely, because they hear them and they sound so close.
Yes.
And then they have different meanings. So absolutely. Okay, so let's continue. So we're not going to say anything more about context clues. And the last thing is about providing vocabulary practice. So let's just, any comments on that? Like, what were your experiences with trying to give kids active practice strategies, not just looking the word up, but doing something actively to get it in their vocabulary? Or what strategies do you know and you always use because they work wonderfully? Let's see if we can hear from a couple other people. Someone else?
I did some work with the science teacher, but the reason I've hesitated is it's middle school, but they're not expanding.
Oh, that's all right, Olga. Go ahead. Tell us what you did.
Yeah, so there was a lesson on biotic and abiotic matter. The science teacher was working on, like, carbon and what is matter and what are things, and in a bigger unit. And so I said, wait a second, this text is not accessible because they're not expanding yet. and they're not on grade level, and they need a lot of work. So I said, let me just take them and let's try and break down this text. And the first thing I thought was, they're not understanding the question from the teacher at all, because they cannot break this word down. So
Yes.
we did more of a breakdown, like one of those choices that you had given earlier about looking at the prefixes and suffixes of words. So first we looked at biotic and just the word the part bio out of that.
Yeah,
Kids
great.
knew that. They knew that meant life, because I had taught it with the word biology previously in another part of the year. And so they remembered it, which made me feel well, pretty good. And
That's
then
great.
the prefix A is unusual.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
you don't see that often. So the teacher had not explained these terms, and I'm sure other students besides the ENL learners probably were not really getting that either, and that they could all have used this lesson.
Yes, and then it's a context clue in the future, right? That morphological clue.
Right, and
So
we
it's
worked
worth
on
the
that.
time.
Yeah, just the fact that it's abiotic. So now we have to first learn bio, then we have to learn biotic, then now we're going to stick that A in front of it. And so we did a chart, and we did a practice, and then we did some reading where we then said, oh, okay, I get it. And then we made a short, sort of conversation, short little list of other words that may start with A as a prefix. Very unusual.
Yes, the only one I can think of is A and amoral.
Yeah,
Amoral.
I
So
wouldn't know.
it's taking you into topics that have nothing to do with biology.
Exactly. So I didn't want to go there. But other prefixes, obviously, I've taught more common ones. And since they're not expanding, they're much, they need your basic un and dis and other things like this.
Right.
For prefixes.
But I
So
want to stress, Olga, like it's an important thing you're pointing out. That oftentimes when we do good work with Ells, and we're helping other kids.
they all needed that. They all were like, oh yeah, okay, now I see it.
Yeah.
They all
That's
needed
helpful.
it. And the teacher didn't realize that they had to, this is my new word of the week for some reason, it's in my head, is to deconstruct. I realized that that's what I'm doing all the time.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
deconstructing something in its form. And then what I do is I take it apart. I don't know. I try and I like to cook. So I say, if I just have some macaroni with a spoon of ricotta on the side, I say that's a deconstructed lasagna.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I construct it, and now I've made something. And I feel like I can associate that in my personal life. I associate that with what I am doing at work. And
Yeah.
it clicks for me as a teacher, and I'm a new ENL teacher, that's what I'm really doing all the time.
Yes, and I think you can see right away that it's just something humans do, and it's useful.
Right. And so, and I think that all the kids, I'm like, wait a second, let me just say to the teacher, let's co-teach this whole lesson on whatever it might be in whatever class, because I think they all need this deconstructed. They all need the building blocks before they've got the whole.
Well, I think we have time for, thank you for that, Olga.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
No, it's fine. Now we have time for one more comment of something that one of you might have tried to give kids more active practice.
Can I just add one thing when teaching that prefix of A? One of the things that works best with all the kids right now is synchronous and asynchronous.
Yeah, that could work. Right, that could work.
Kindergarten to 12, they know it.
That could work. Good connection. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Someone else just talking about something that you do that's very active with vocabulary, and it does get words in to kids' systems?
Nancy, I agree with Walleen. You may want to ask them to put it on the chat.
So to put it in the chat, because people may not answer. Okay, that's true. Yeah, go ahead, people. Just put anything into the chat that you would like to share about an active strategy that you're using. And while you're doing that, because we're getting close to the end and we have a couple bits of feedback we'd like to get from you. But Maria, are you seeing something in the chat you'd like to read aloud? I don't want to go too quickly here.
Not really deconstructing. We all love the deconstructing lasagna idea, and we could really visualize that deconstruction across disciplines. I don't see any other comments.
Well, please put them in because they benefit me, for one, in the future to see the kinds of things that you're doing that are working very well for you. And now we want to collect some feedback from you on this series, how this worked for you. As you know, we structured it with 2 sessions where we showed you tactics and 2 sessions where we tried to follow up with you and see how it went. The first one was to teach you strategies, maybe you already knew them, to unpack sentences with your students. We looked at what contributes to text complexity. We looked at some student samples, the kinds of writing they tend to do and how we have to help them move forward. And we looked at language dives and juicy sentences and graphic organizers for unpacking detailed descriptive passages. And then we looked at the different types of vocabulary to work on, some word analysis tools, the word consciousness, the use of context clues, not that you didn't already know about that, but just to remember there's many types, and then thinking about how to do that active practice. And what we'd like you to do now, we're going to put this into the chat, this link. We would like you to, and Antoine will let me know right away if it's not working and I have to activate it again. We'd like you to take a poll where you're going to answer 7 questions. Some require you to type an answer and some offer you multiple choices. And I'd like you to read all the choices before you respond, and then you just get to pick one. Okay, just one choice if there's a multiple choice, but do consider all of the choices before you answer. And then sometimes the next is at the bottom, but in this case with this poll, poll everywhere, to get to the next question, you have to click next at the top. So we'd like to send you there. And then I know the Arburn also has another way that they'd like to get feedback from you today. So Gloria, can I take like 3 minutes right now to get them to answer this poll, and then we could move on to
Of course.
the question? So I'll watch the clock. I want to give you 3 minutes right now to answer the poll.
Hi, Nancy. I'm going to just share screen the survey just so people know what it looks like.
Sure. Yeah, do I have to stop sharing?
Don't worry, I got it.
Okay. You can put in any name. You can put in Mickey Mouse, or you could put in anonymous, any word. You don't have to give your real name.
So yeah, as mentioned by Nancy, the next button is at the upper right. Hi, Nancy. I'm going to stop sharing so you can share your screen again.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I mean to do that. So while you finish the survey, and let me just remind you what's showing on the screen is how you can find me. It's on every single PowerPoint. You don't need to copy it down. We will send this PowerPoint to you, and we've been recording. Well, like we always do, we'll send you the recording and we'll send you the PowerPoint. I'm happy to talk to any of you about any of this and your experiences. And for things that you didn't have time to try out, if you try them out in the future, we're always available to talk to you back and forth if anything is you have questions about something once you really do start to work on it. Okay, and so now I'm going to turn it back over to Gloria. I'll leave this up just so that you know how to get in touch, but Gloria, by all means, go right ahead.
Okay, so we are going to, we're in the process of planning for next year. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to offer differentiated instruction, differentiate professional development to some group of schools. Of course, this will require for participants to be willing and administrators to allow the teachers participating to actually participate by actually doing the assignments, trying out the strategies, coming back and talking about them, just like Nancy modeled today. It will take some ownership on the part of the administration to make sure that this is done, and also from the teacher to make sure that they are doing it. We really have seen really good practices as we go around in different schools, and seeing that there's a group of teachers that are actually really doing a great job of actually implementing some of these strategies. And our greatest concern is the fact that we're not moving expanding students in the state. It's not only your school, it's in the state. We're not moving expanding students. These are strategies that every teacher should utilize, but we're not going to stop offering professional development citywide like we always have, but we would like to have a group of schools that are actually going to work very hard on actually becoming experts at this, so that we can share some school labs, you know, people that are actually using these strategies, moving the students along, and they will get the best professional development, because I don't think there's any argument here that Nancy is a treasure. And people like her. So we are willing to do that. But in order to do that, we need you to make a commitment. In order to do that, we actually prepared a survey. That's, you don't have to finish today, but you will, it is important, if you are interested or your school is interested in participating, that you actually return the survey thoroughly with the answers that it has. What we actually do is we're going to use that as a needs assessment to determine what topics are needed for next year, what kind of initiatives are going on but are not really being addressed in the school or the district. And of course, we welcome, Ms. Bastien, we welcome your input very much. But we also welcome the people that are actually doing the work, which is you as teachers. So I'm going to ask you very humbly, please take time. You don't have to finish it right now, but you should return it, and it will be sent to every participant that we had for the series. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm also going to remind you that if you want CTLE, again, you have to have your name, email address, and Zoom usually addresses the amount of time that every person stayed on screen. And that's how we go about, that's the legal way to do the CTL credit that we do. And also please fill out the survey so that we can share with Nancy, and she will know what to address the next time that she comes back, which I know, hopefully, God willing, is not the last one.
And anything else you'd like to say about today or the series that you didn't get to put into the survey, please put that in the chat. And with that, we thank you for coming, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We know it's a professional development day, so hope that all of your time will be valuable and that you'll get a lot out of everything you do today. Thank you for being a part of the series, and look forward to seeing all of you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can, all of you are free birds now, once you've taken care of these final tasks. Thank you so much.